This ain't just a channel, this is BBTV.
This isn't about last night or what happened after dark. This is about the middle of the day moments where something small turns nuclear before you even finish your coffee.
One sentence, one reaction, one emotional spark, and suddenly the whole situation is on fire. Welcome to Freak Out Friday on AskABee, because this one didn't just escalate, it got out of hand real fast.
Boss be rising, BBTV's igniting, turn the volume up, yeah, the whole world's invited. From the gravel road to the neon dream, she built an empire out of broken wings. Boss be rising, sky ain't even the ceiling when she hits go live, everybody feels it.
Hey y'all, how you doing? It's AskABee, Freak Out Friday. Fun. All right, so today is not one of those days where we celebrate the music first. Today we step into the moments where everything behind that music cracked wide open, because every artist we talk about, every name we put on a pedestal, every song we say we love comes with pressure that most people never see. And that pressure, it doesn't just sit quietly, it builds, it stacks, it pushes, and eventually something gives. And when it gives in this industry, it doesn't happen behind closed doors. It happens in front of cameras and interviews, on stages, in moments that get replayed over and over again until they become the story. And you know what? That's what Freak Out Friday is really about now. It's not just the moment someone snaps, it's everything that led up to it and everything that came after it, because nobody wakes up one day and decides, I'll just blow up my career today. Nobody just flips a switch and walks away from everything they built. There's always something underneath it, something building for years that finally reaches a point where it can't be held together anymore. And today, we're looking at 4 different situations where that pressure, it showed up in very different ways, different genres, different paths, but the same kind of breaking point. And what makes it hit is not just what happened in the moment, it's how fast everything can change when it does. Because one decision, one argument, one reaction can take years of work and shift it in a completely different direction. And the world doesn't pause when that happens, okay? It watches, it reacts, it chooses sides. It even turns into headlines. And the artist is left in the middle of it, dealing with something real while it's being turned into something public. And that's where these stories live today. In that space between the music and the moment where everything goes sideways. And the only questions that really matter as we go through this is not just what they did, but what was happening before it and what it cost them after. Because those are the parts that don't always get talked about when all people remember is the freak out, right? All right, so our first subject of the day. This one's kind of the given, and I think we all know this story a little bit. Yes, Miss Britney Spears. I want to tell you, I lived in Louisiana quite a while, and a couple of counties over from where she grew up. It's crazy, small world. So Britney was born in Macomb, Mississippi, and raised in Kentwood, Louisiana. It's a small town where everybody knows everybody and where her voice stood out early and clearly, singing in church, entering local competitions, and pushing towards a stage before she even understands what that life is going to demand from her. And her family leans into it, driving her to auditions, putting her in front of casting calls, chasing opportunities that pull her out of that small town life and into a national spotlight while she is still just a kid, landing on shows like Star Search and then the Mickey Mouse Club, where she is surrounded by other young performers and learns quickly how to rehearse, how to perform on cue, how to stay on when the camera is rolling. And when that chapter ends, she doesn't go back to a normal life because then the direction is already set. And in the late 90s, she signs with Jive Records and records Baby One More Time. Or, you know, yeah, I've got that wrong. Anyway, when that song releases in 1998, it doesn't build slowly, it explodes. Number one around the world, the video everywhere, the image locked in immediately. And overnight, she becomes one of the most recognizable people on the planet, not just a singer, but a fully packaged pop figure with a specific look, a specific sound, and a level of control around her image that shapes how the world sees her. And she delivers exactly what is expected. Album after album, hit after hit, tours, performances, award shows, global fame, and all of it is happening while she is growing up in public, still figuring out who she is, but doing it in front of millions of people who are watching every single move. And that attention doesn't stay focused on just the music. It spreads into her personal life, her relationship with Justin Timberlake becoming headlines, the breakup becoming even bigger headlines. And you know what? From that point on, her life is no longer just hers. It is part of a constant narrative that follows her everywhere. And as the early 2000s move forward, she keeps working, releasing music, performing, maintaining that position at the top, but the pressure never drops. It stacks higher. And then comes the decision that play out publicly. You know, a quick marriage in Las Vegas that is annulled almost immediately, followed later by her marriage to Kevin. And for a moment, it looks like she's stepping into a different phase, becoming a mother, having two sons, trying to balance that life with everything else that is still happening around her. But the cameras never leave. The attention never fades. And when that marriage begins to fall apart, it happens in front of the world with custody battles, legal issues, paparazzi surrounding her constantly. How many people have we lost because of paparazzi? Seriously. Diana. I mean, yeah, I'm old, but there you go. But they were constantly following her car, blocking her path, documenting every single reaction she had. And the environment around her becomes more intense instead of less. By the time that the 2007 hits, everything that has been building for years is sitting on top of her at once. Look, the expectations, the scrutiny, the personal stress, the lack of privacy. And there is no break from it, no space, no time to step away, no moment where she is not being watched. And that is when the moment happens that becomes impossible to ignore. She walks into a salon in Tarzana, sits down, and when the stylist refuses to cut her hair, she takes the clippers and shaves her own head while photographers crowd outside taking pictures through the windows. And those images are everywhere almost immediately. And instead of the attention slowing down, it doubles. What does that mean? Limpio. I don't understand. Sorry. All right. So because now the story is no longer just about a pop star. It's about someone in crisis. And every move she makes after that is followed even more closely. And within days, another moment hits. The umbrella incident, where she swings at a photographer's car while flashes go off around her, And those images spread just as fast, becoming another defining piece of that time. And what makes it different is how constant it is. There is no pause between moments, no chance for things to settle. It is one event after another, all being captured, all being shared, all being consumed. And while all of that is happening, her personal life is still unraveling behind the scenes. Custody decisions, legal control shifting, people stepping in to manage her life. And the focus completely moves away from her music to her behavior, to what she is doing, where she's going, how she looks. And those moments, the shaved head and the umbrella, became the images that define her in the public eye for years. Not because they are the only things that happen, but because they are the ones the world locked onto and replayed over and over again. And from that point forward, her story changes. Not just in how it was told, but in how it is controlled. Her life moving into a different kind of structure where decisions are made for her, where her independence is limited. And even as she continues to release music and perform and stay visible, everything is filtered through what happened in that period. And as the years go on, the conversation around her, it begins to shift. People start looking back at that time differently, questioning, how it was handled, how constant the coverage was, how little space there was for her to be a person outside of it. And that leads into another phase where her story, it becomes more about more than just those moments. It becomes about what followed, how controlled, or about who controlled, how it was controlled, about autonomy, about how long that structure lasted and what it meant for her life. And eventually that pressure, it builds in a different direction towards change, towards ending the level of control. And her story continues beyond that, still tied to the same art that began in a small town, moved to a global stage, rose fast, broke in front of the world, and then spent years being defined by that break before slowly reshaping what came next. All of it connected, all of it part of one continuous story that never really stopped once the world started, you know? And, it hasn't stopped. I know we all know what's happening with her again. Not good. But can you imagine how much of that pressure is because of what she had to endure, not being able to grow up like a normal child? I'm all for doing things like that with your child when they're old enough to understand what it means and what it entails and what it'll take from them. It's important. All right. Here's our next Freak Out Friday story. Can you guess? Kanye West. Yeah, I know. Look, Kane was born in Atlanta but raised in Chicago by his mother. After his parents separated, and from the beginning, his life is shaped by two things that don't always sit together easily: discipline and creativity. Because his mother is an educator who expects structure, reading, thinking, learning, while Kane is drawn to art and drawing and writing and music, constantly creating. And that combination builds something early, a confidence that he is meant to do something bigger, even before he knows what that is. And as he grows up in Chicago, he starts focusing on music, not as a performer at first, but as a producer, making beats, selling them, learning how songs are built piece by piece And by the late 90s, he is moving deeper into the industry, working with artists, building connections, and eventually landing at Rockefeller Records, where he becomes known for his production, especially on Jay-Z's The Blueprint, where his sound stands out. Soulful samples, layered emotion, something that cuts through what people are used to hearing. But while he is building that reputation, he is also pushing to be seen as a rapper. And that's where the resistance hits, because the industry has already decided that he is the producer, not the artist. I can understand how he feels sometimes. But he keeps pushing away anyway, right? Recording his own tracks, trying to get people to listen, trying to break out of the box he's been placed in. And in 2002, everything almost stops when he's in a serious car accident. Excuse me. That shatters his jaw. So they had to wire it shut. And instead of disappearing, he records through the wire while still healing, turning that moment into part of his story, showing that he is not stepping back. And when the college dropout releases in 2004, it changes everything, because now he is not just producing hits for other people. He is the one in the front, and the album connects, not just because of the sound, but because of the perspective, talking about things others aren't, and mixing confidence with vulnerability. And from there, the rise is fast. Late registration, graduation, bigger crowds, bigger expectations, more attention. And with that attention comes something else. A growing willingness to step outside the script, to say things other artists avoid. And that shows up publicly in moments people can't ignore. Like in 2005, during a live telethon, when he goes off script and says George Bush doesn't care about black people, catching everyone off guard and instantly becoming a headline. And that moment sets a tone that he is not going to stay inside the lines. You go, man. I'm serious. And his career continues. The music evolves. 808s and heartbreak, shifting his sound completely, more emotional, more stripped down, influencing a whole generation. And then My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, bringing him back at the highest levels critically. But at the same time, the public moments keep building. And in 2009, at the MTV Video Music Awards, he walks on stage while Taylor Swift is accepting an award, takes the microphone, interrupts her to say Beyonce had one of the best videos of all time. And that moment spreads instantly, replayed everywhere, turning into one of the most talked about incidents in pop culture. And from that point forward, every appearance carries a different weight. Because now people are watching not just for the music, but for what he might do next, right? And over time, those moments become more frequent. Interviews, concerts, social media, each one carrying the potential for another break from expectation. And the line between Kane and the artist, or Kane the artist and Kane the headline, becomes harder to separate. And the pressure doesn't just come from the outside anymore. It builds internally. The expectation to stay on top, to stay relevant, to keep pushing boundaries. And that pressure shows up in different ways, in long on-stage rants during concerts, in sudden stops to performances, in statements that pull attention away from the music and towards the moment. And his career continues alongside it. Albums, tours, collaborations, business ventures, but always tied to that unpredictability. that sense that something could shift at any time. And for some people, that becomes part of the appeal. The rawness, the honesty, the refusal to filter. While for others, it becomes the reason they step back. And through it all, the same pattern runs from the beginning. A kid raised by a strong, structured parent, building his craft from the ground up, pushing against how he is defined, breaking through in a major way, and then continuing to challenge and disrupt, and sometimes completely derail the expectations placed on him, creating moments that don't just stay inside the music industry, but they spill out into culture as a whole. Moments where the line between brilliance and chaos isn't really clear. Where success and controversy move side by side. And also where every step forward carries the possibility of another public break that the world will watch in real time. Because with Kane, the story is never just about the music. It is about what happens when someone refuses to stay inside the boundaries that were set for them. Even when breaking those boundaries comes with consequences that follow them just as loudly as their success. It's true. All right, y'all. You know what time it is. Little break time for me. I shall return.
She came from the quiet storms, built a fire from the ground, turned a whisper to a warning. Now her voice shakes the town. Every step back was a lesson. Every doubt became a key, unlocking something bigger. That's the rise of Boss B. When the lights go low, her vision hits high. She built a whole damn network off a promise and a try. Every sunrise, every moment, she's stacking legacy. This ain't just a channel, this is BBTV. A Boss B rising, BBTV's igniting. Turn the volume up, yeah, the whole world's invited. From the gravel roads to the neon dreams, she built an empire out of broken wings. Boss B rising, sky ain't even the ceiling. When she hits go live, everybody feels it. She's the queen of the comeback, the storm in the stream, crafting stories out of heartbeats, making visions out of dreams. Got thunder in the hustle, got a voice that cuts clean. Every mic she touches turns to power unseen. So let further spin the numbers, let the views rise slow or fast. Boss B doesn't measure wins by echoes of the past. This moment is a pivot, this season's history. Bow down to the founder of the BBTV dynasty. Boss B rising, BBTV's igniting. Turn the volume up, yeah, the whole world's invited. From the gravel roads to the neon dreams, she built an empire out of broken wings. Boss B rising, sky ain't even the ceiling. When she hits go live, everybody feels it. She's got fire in the head, it's got truth in the frame. Got a heart that won't retire and a gift you can't name. Every loop, every letter, every dream she sets free. It's a love note to the world sign. Boss B. And the world keeps watching as the numbers climb, but she's counting all the moments, not the dollar signs. From the late night grind to the daylight scene, she's building something bigger than the algorithm's dream. Boss B rising, BBTV shining. Her story's rewriting, a legacy in real time. Boss B rising, BBTV's igniting. Turn the volume up, yeah, the whole world's invited. From the gravel roads to the neon dreams, she built an empire out of broken wings. Boss B rising, sky ain't even the ceiling. When she
And that, my friends, is what happens when you edit at the last minute. Yeah, that's the truth. That is the truth. The God's honest truth. I'm telling you, I edited that way too fast. Oh, well, 2 million people watching. You'll forgive me, right? Yeah, that's what I thought. Anyway, back to it. Because we have 2 more artists that I'd like to talk about. Okay. Our next is Destiny's Child. Yep. So they began in Houston, Texas, repping my Texas ladies now. Texas is the early 1990s as a group of young girls who were brought together through auditions and local performances, originally performing under the name Girls Time. Entering competitions like Star Search, where they lose but gain experience. And from the beginning, the group is run with structure and discipline from under Matthew Knowles, who organizes rehearsals, travels, opportunities, pushing them towards something bigger than local success. And over time, the lineup shifts until it enters around Beyonce Knowles, Kelly Rowland, and Latoya Luckett, and Latavia Robertson. And after years of trying to get signed, they finally land a record deal in the late 90s, releasing their debut album and then breaking through with The Writings on the Wall, which launches them into major success with songs like Bills, 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 and Say My Name. Yeah, I love that one. Putting them at the top of R&B and pop simultaneously. But while the world is seeing a polished, successful group, things behind the scenes are becoming strained because as the success grows, so do the questions about management and money and control. And those tensions stay mostly hidden until about 2000, when everything breaks into the open. Because during the interviews, Latoya Luckett and Latavia Robertson, reveal that they have been pushed out of the group, saying they were locked out, replaced without warning, and that they realized what had happened when they saw the Say My Name video featuring Michelle Williams and Farrah Franklin in their place. And that moment, it hits publicly all at once. Pardon me. Awesome. We have 3 million watching now. Okay, so turning what would have been a high point in their career into a full-scale controversy with lawsuits filed against Matthew Knowles and the group, accusations about management decisions spreading across media, and fans suddenly divided over what actually happened behind the scenes. The focus shifts from the music to the conflict. And for a moment, it looks like the group might not survive the fallout because trust inside the group is completely broken. The public image is shaken, and everything is happening in real time under constant attention. And even after Farrah Franklin exits shortly after, leaving Beyonce, Kelly Rowland, and Michelle Williams as the final trio, the pressure does not go away because now they have to prove they can continue without the original lineup. And instead of stepping back, they push forward, releasing the album Survivor in 2001, which directly reflects what they are going through, with songs that address the situation and reframe the narrative, turning conflict into part of their identity rather than letting it define their end. And that move works because the album, it succeeds. The group stabilizes as a trio, and they continue performing and touring and maintaining their position in the industry. Excuse me. But even within the stability, new dynamics are forming. I'm going to reel that one back in. Forgive me, I'm fishing today. New dynamics are forming because Beyonce's visibility continues to grow at a faster pace. More interviews, more attention, more opportunities outside the group. And while Destiny's Child remains active, it becomes clear that each member is beginning to move in slightly different directions. And over the next few years, they balance group work with individual projects, maintaining the group while also exploring what comes next. Can't blame them for that, right? And by the time they release Destiny Fulfilled in 2004, the direction is already set because shortly after they announced that this will be their final album and tour, choosing to end the group on their own terms rather than allowing internal conflict or external pressure to break them apart again. And when you look back at their story, the defining freak out moment isn't just the lineup change itself, it's how quickly everything shifted from success to public conflict, how the breakdown inside the group became visible to the world all at once, and also how the moment forced them to either collapse or rebuild, and they chose to rebuild, using that pressure to completely reshape their identity and continue forward long enough to close their own story on their own terms. I mean, that's pretty darn awesome if you ask me. They were showing how fast success can turn into conflict and how that conflict can either end a group or redefine it, depending on what happens in the moment when everything finally comes to the surface. That's a big line to cross and still continue to have a conversation, still continue to be a part of each other's lives and be happy that everybody is doing what they're wanting to do and happy about what they're doing, right? That's what's more important here. That shows a lot of maturity to me. So the next is Oasis. And Oasis forms in Manchester, England in 1991 out of a local band called The Rain, with Liam Gallagher as the frontman and his older brother Noel joining shortly after as the main songwriter. And from the very beginning, the band is built on two completely different personalities forced into the same space. Liam is loud and impulsive and confrontational, and Noel more controlled but just as stubborn. And even before the fame hits, the tension between them is already there. Arguments, disagreements. I mean, sibling rivalry, y'all. A constant push and pull that never really settles, but the music connects. And by 1994, they released Definitely Maybe, which becomes a massive success in the UK, followed by What's the Story? Morning Glory in 1995, which pushes them into global fame, sold out tours, huge crowds, songs that define an era. And with that success, everything around them gets bigger. The expectations, the pressure, the attention, and instead of bringing stability, it magnifies the problems that were already there. Because now every disagreement happens under pressure. Every argument has an audience, and the way they interact with each other, sometimes part of the band's identity is what it is. Interviews where they openly insult each other, moments where they contradict each other in public, fans laughing it off as part of the attitude, while underneath it's something much less controlled. And that dynamic carries into their tours, where arguments happen before shows, during shows, after shows, creating an environment where the band is constantly moving forward but never stable. And in 1996, during a US tour, things reach a point where Noel temporarily leaves the band after a fight with Liam, flying back to England while the rest of the group is left to continue. And even when he returns, the relationship, it doesn't reset. It continues under the same tension. And over the next several years, the cycle repeats. Albums released, tours announced, success continuing, but always alongside conflict, studio arguments, canceled appearances, interviews where the hostility is obvious. And the more time passes, the more it becomes clear that the band is being held together by the same thing that is slowly pulling it apart, because the music depends on both of them. But their relationship, well, it makes working together harder with each passing year. And instead of resolving that tension, it gets pushed aside over and over again. And to keep the band moving, now, by the 2000s, that pressure is constant. Years of unsolved conflict, years of working together without fixing what's underneath. And then in August of 2009, during a tour, stop in Paris, everything finally reaches the point where it can't be pushed any further. Backstage, before the show, an argument breaks out between Noel and Liam. Not a new kind of argument, but one that escalates further than usual. Instruments are damaged, words are exchanged that go beyond the usual back and forth. And in that moment, Noel makes the decision to walk away, announcing shortly after that he is leaving Oasis because he can no longer work with his brother. And that single decision ends the band immediately. The show is canceled, the tour is over, and a group that had been one of the biggest bands in the world is finished. Not with a farewell or a final performance, but in a backstage argument right before going on stage. And what makes that moment stand out is that it isn't sudden when you look at the full story. It's the result of everything that came before it. Every argument, every unresolved issue, every time they pushed through instead of fixing what was breaking between them. And from the outside, it looks like a single fight ended the band. But in reality, it was years of tension building in both public and private until there was nowhere left for it to go. And when it finally snapped, it didn't slow down. It didn't get managed. It ended everything at once, leaving behind a story where the same relationship that created the band also became the reason it couldn't continue. A rise built on two brothers working together, and a fall caused by those same two brothers no longer being able to exist in the same space without everything falling apart. And it did. That's why, you don't hear of them very much anymore. It's crazy how things happen. And, I'm a firm believer in you should not work with your family. It causes much unnecessary chaos. And I get it if you're a musical family. I've seen I've seen families get along just fine. But there's always going to be a tension. And sometimes when there's no outlet, that tension it becomes a breaking point that you can't walk away from. So, when you step back and you look at all four of these stories together, what stands out isn't just the moment where things fell apart. It's how different each path was leading into and how similar the breaking point feels once it happens. Because whether it was pressure from the industry or tension inside a group, public expectations or years of unresolved conflict. Every one of these artists hit a point where something finally gave, and once it did, there was no clean way to contain it. No way to keep it private. No way to rewind it. Although I wish I had a rewind button myself sometimes. And that's the part that stays with you, because it reminds you that, you know what, behind every headline, behind every viral moment, every story people think they understand, there's always, always more going on than what makes it to the surface. And sometimes those moments don't just change how people see artists, they change the entire direction of the career. Sometimes they build or rebuild from it, and sometimes they walk away from it. Hell, sometimes they carry it with them for years after years. And that's why these stories matter. Not because they're dramatic, but because they show how fast everything can shift when pressure reaches a point where it can't be managed anymore. So as we close this one out today, a little early, but life, y'all, I want you to think about that, okay? Not just what happened, but how quickly things can change when those moments hit. I understand, you know, their stories are their stories. They're not our stories, but you can pick from these and find moments that are the same, and hopefully it'll help. You know, you really need to focus on how different the outcome can be depending on what happens next. And if you've been writing with us through these stories the whole time, do me a favor. Make sure you're part of the conversation over on Tuber Chat too, okay? Where the community helps or keeps, keeps these discussions going beyond the show. And don't forget to check in with BB, because she's going to be up here too, as well as where we keep building this space. You know, Big Jack and I, we do everything that we possibly can to keep you all entertained, and we have all these different shows that we are a part of and producing, and guys, you should be there. So listen to BB, get your hind ends over there to see my brother over there, Iron Sharpening Iron Universe, and Tuber Chat. Please make sure you go see them too. You guys, I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you showing up, and we'll keep this thing moving the next time we step back into the stories behind the music, because you know I love that part. All right, y'all take care. Y'all have a good day, and I'll buzz you later.
I want to take a minute to shout out Tuber Chat. If you're a creator who's tired of surface level advice, yet says, and actually wants to understand how YouTube works, that's the space. It's real conversations with real creators who are in the trenches, building channels, testing ideas. No posturing, no gatekeeping, no fake guru energy, just people sharing what's working, what isn't, and why.
If you're serious about growing, learning, and not doing this alone, check out Tuber Chat. The link is in the description. If you're enjoying this show, subscribing is the easiest way to support what's being built here on BBTV. You'll see the join button right next to subscribe. No pressure, no expectations, just an option for people who want to support the channel in a real way.
We're live every day at 3 p.m. Central now.
And don't worry, we didn't change the heat, just the clock. And if you've got a story you want to share, send it in. Anonymous is always fine.
A boss be rising.